Welcome to this week's episode of Hired. I am your host, Mike Thompson from Spark, and I am super excited for this week's topic, but more excited for my guest. And before I bring Aisling out, I wanted to give you a little background on what you can expect. So I got my notes here. Our research department went real deep, kind of scouring social media, LinkedIn to figure out what we could to tell you guys about Aisling, and her background's unique. She started in HR, in recruiting, so I can relate. She's one of my peeps. And then she started her career with Meltwater, where she spent nearly 11 years with a mandate to grow. And she built not only teams, but offices across North America successfully for 11 years. What was next? After one rocket ship, she thought, hey, that was fun. Let's do it all over again. She is on her second rocket ship now with Auditboard, which has been recognized, I believe, for the third straight year by Deloitte as one of the fastest growing tech companies in North America. So that's the facts of what you can know. Now let's get to know the person. And it didn't take me long or my research department long to find out what people thought about Aisling. If you look at her recommendations and references that people gave her on LinkedIn, here's some adjectives that people use to describe her as a leader. And this will give you a sense. She's competitive. She's record-breaking, fierce, compassionate, committed, passionate, mentor, an inspiring coach, and my favorite, cool under pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my guest, Aisling Blundell. Aisling, welcome to the show. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike. I think I might have to steal your introduction as my new introduction speech. That was very flattering.
I do offer that as a service. I give that to you. And before any Zoom call, you can just play it before you kind of come on. It's something that I give to all my guests. So there you go. Where are you joining us from today?
So I'm actually at home in Ireland. So I'm coming to you from Dublin City, my mom's kitchen here. My husband and my kids were all here for the month of July, giving the grandparents some time with their kids. So it's been a lot of fun. But yes, international today. I'm usually in Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C.
Awesome. And knowing your background kind of spanning across North America, I'm going to make an assumption that airports and planes are not foreign to you. It's something that you're probably used to, racking up the miles. More importantly, what I'd like to know, what's your go-to airport snack?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love, ask anyone. This is my go-to airport snack, office snack, any office that I get to. If they truly love me, there's a Diet Coke and a bag of Twizzlers and Diet Coke. It's my go-to snack wherever you find me. Even in Ireland, I brought a bag of Twizzlers with me, and my mom has the fridge stocked with Diet Coke. So there you go.
Are you one where it's like Diet Coke and Diet Pepsi? Like, don't even try to put that in front of me. It's got to be Diet Coke.
Actually, no. I actually love them both, but I think they taste completely different. I love a Diet Pepsi earlier in the day. I think it's much sweeter. And then later at night, if I want a second, I'll go for a Diet Coke because it's less sweet. So I love them both uniquely in their own ways.
See, that's it goes to my point about how everybody's unique, because the general theme is you got to pick a side. It's one or the other, and you break that mold. You're saying bring them both on. Now,
that's me.
Today we're going to get into the topic about, kind of how we can personalize our recruiting pitch. And before I jump into that, I kind of want to segue into, you throughout your career have recruited people or introduced people to sales, that haven't had experience before, and you've had to introduce them into that industry. There's probably a bunch, and I know there are a bunch of success stories you have, but can you share one that sticks out of somebody you hired, maybe you took a chance on, and how that worked out? I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, and just so people know, we didn't prep this, and that's why I'm rambling a little bit, so I can let Aisling kind of go through and think, just filling the air so she can go. And I think she's ready she's ready. So let's hear it.
I'm ready. And to be honest, a few people come to mind because at my last job, I was there for about 12 years. We were hiring candidates straight out of school. Maybe they had a year or two of experience, but some of the best people I hired were straight out of school, maybe not even graduated yet, had no idea what they wanted to do. And I met them maybe at a career fair, maybe at a bar, maybe at a social event. And I told them, you know what? Your energy tells me you need to be in sales. Just having talked with you for 5 minutes, you need to be in sales. And they might never have thought of it. And so one success story that comes to mind is someone I actually hired in Washington, D.C. She went to American University, and I was immediately impressed with her at the interview. Actually, very excited, very excited. Like, she had no idea what she wanted to do. She had no idea, but I knew it was sales. I knew she should be in sales. She was thinking of going to law school. I'm like, this girl is everything I need on the team here in DC. And so everything was great. And I offered her the job, and she turned it down. And I was like, oh no, I wasn't expecting that. So I called her, and she said, yeah, I actually ran through the job offer and the company with one of my professors at university and my parents, and I'm going to turn this offer down. And I said, no, you have to come meet with me. Come get a coffee with me. Let's talk through whatever their reservations were. At least give me a chance. So she said, okay. So we met for coffee. I think it would turn into lunch. And the reservations were, I don't want to say silly, but they were very much, thinking of sales in the old school way, like sleazy car salesmen. No offense to any car salesmen that are dialed in today. But yeah, there was valid concerns about how sales, your quotas are going to change all the time. You're going to get hired and fired, and nobody's going to care about you. And there's no development here. And you're only paid on commission, which for most sales jobs, just, it's not the case. You actually get a really high base and a lot of commission on top. So I was able to knock all of the objections out. And I think one of the ways I did this, and maybe this is a whole other topic we can talk about, but it's all about being genuine. And I explained to her that I had the same concerns. My parents definitely had the same concerns when I took the job in sales to start my career. I originally was on the HR path and started in recruiting, and then made the switch to sales and was all in. And it was the best decision I ever made. And so anyways, convinced her to take the job. She was pretty good off the bat, actually. I remember thinking, this is the first time I'm ever going to give someone feedback that they should be less aggressive or less direct. Because usually when you hire someone brand new to sales, they're a little scared of the phone, or they're a little scared of, being direct. I was the opposite with her. I actually had to tone her back a little bit. But she was successful from day one. I've never been more proud of anyone. And not only did she go on to be an amazing seller, she actually recently took on my last role at the company. So she's overseeing the entire East Coast region now at Meltwater, multiple offices. She became an amazing sales leader as well as sales talent. And I think it just shows that, never just give up on something. Always, investigate further. Not to say never turn down a job, but always investigate and make sure you're making the right decision. Because I know she speaks on podcasts now, and she speaks about how this has changed her life. She's been able to travel internationally, make a lot of money, and have this huge career in leadership that she loves.
What a great success story. That wasn't even planned, and you pulled that out. And I think you touched on a few things that we could have gone down, although being genuine and actually treating recruiting like it's a sales approach, where you did, and you knew that there was value there, and you wanted to kind of explore it and give all the information. So kudos to you. And that's why I'm so excited for this topic about personalizing the recruiting. We call it a recruiting pitch because it is a pitch. It's not just an open job description. So as we go into this, I mean, you yourself have recently gone through the hiring process as a candidate. How has that experience shaped you now that you're on the other side and back in a hiring capacity? Because you hired for 10 years, now you were a candidate, and now you're back to hiring. So how did that experience as a candidate shape how maybe you're hiring differently, or just kind of any insights you gathered through being a candidate?
Yeah, I think it's been a great experience, actually, going from not interviewing for 10 years. Not interviewing. I was the interviewer. But I had never been on the other side of the table. I genuinely hadn't looked elsewhere. I was very happy in my role. And it really helped me, I want to say, reinforce what I already thought or what I'd already learned. It really reinforced some things. And the number one thing I would say it reinforced is the importance of being genuine. Because when I started interviewing with different companies and speaking with different people, it was one of the first things that I guess rubbed me either the right way or the wrong way. I would speak to some recruiters, and I knew straight off the bat, and I would say this to them, I said, I know you're just giving me a sales pitch right now. I'm in sales. I've been in sales my whole career. I don't want a sales pitch. I really want the next step in my career to be the right one for me. And so what I lean towards when I was speaking with different companies is the companies where, honestly, usually I wasn't speaking with a recruiter. I was speaking with someone internally, and they were talking about, firstly, their own experience, but then secondly, they were asking me what I wanted. I think that was one of the biggest things that even stood out about Auditboard is when I met with the CRO. Our first conversation was him helping me figure out what did I actually want in my next step, because I hadn't interviewed or thought about my next step for 10 years, at least not outside of the company I was at. And that's a huge thing to think about. Yeah, what do you want your next step to look like? What do you want your next company to look like? And the fact that he and certain other people took the time to actually not only ask me that, but even help me figure it out, because there was definitely areas where I was like, do I want that or do I want this? I think that's what really spoke to me. And when I was able to figure out that people were speaking more so from the heart and more so genuine, it really reinforced to me the importance of that when I'm interviewing. So now that I'm back in the interviewing seat myself, it's definitely something I've taken even more so. I think being genuine has always been important to me, but even more so now, I really lean on my experience. I am very upfront with people who are interviewing at Auditboard that I haven't been at Auditboard that long. You know, with Meltwater, I could be, listen, I've been here 10 years. Let me tell you how it is. But at Auditboard, I've only been here a couple of months. So at first I was like, is that going to be hard for me recruiting, right? I was almost nervous, like talking to, interviewing people and then being like, well, I've only been here a couple of weeks. But actually what I did was I remembered what it's like to be in their shoes. And I told them, I was like, I was literally in your shoes a couple of months ago. And here's what I learned throughout the interview process. Here's what I learned about Auditboard. And here's how it applied to me. Here's why I chose Auditboard. Now, and then I'll try and figure out, now, is any of that stuff important to you? Because if it's not, there might be other things that Auditboard offer that are important to them. But in general, if some of this stuff isn't resonating with them, then maybe Auditboard's not the place for them. Maybe they're not the right candidate. And that's a big way I think I've always interviewed is, I think sometimes people just think of interviewing as firing questions at the other person and figuring out if they're good or not. For me, it's always been more about figuring out if it's a mutual fit. If I feel like they could be good at the job, but also if they feel like they could be good at the job. I think that's probably even more important than what I feel.
I love what you were saying there about how when you were a candidate, it was thinking about what you want to do. And I think a lot of people fall, they go back to what they've done, what I can do. Like, because I've done this, I can do that. Where it's like, no, what do you want to do? And what's next for you? And thinking about that. So you're breaking the mold and, you're expanding the opportunities that you can explore. And now you've carried that to the recruiting side where you're looking at candidates that are maybe don't fit the typical mold and you're expanding the talent pool from which you're drawing off of. So how do you do that? How do you expand the talent pool? And we'll talk about it from sales, but like normally the typical way of doing it is, you look at someone that's been in, you're hiring for a SaaS-based company. You want someone that is sold in a SaaS-based company. That's the easy, or as I like to call lazy recruiting. But how would you expand the talent pool to not include just the obvious?
Yeah, I think we definitely do that. And I've definitely done that for many years. I think speaking specifically about Auditboard, we sell a complex product. It's a technical sale. It's not a matter of just picking up the phone and whoever makes the most dials will be the most successful. And I've been in sales jobs like that, and that's a talent in itself. But here it's more complex. What it'll actually take to be successful is a mix of both who's going to make the most dials or who's going to be the hungriest, but you also have to have an understanding of the industry. And so we're speaking with CISOs all day, every day, like heads of security, heads of IT. They have their own world in GRC. So governance, risk, compliance. Compliance is the area I'm really focused on. That's what my team sells. And so what we've been trying to do at Auditboard is actually look and see who's worked in compliance. A lot of and this is, I can't give any credit to myself here. This is always been the case at Auditboard. A lot of the employees at Auditboard actually came from companies like PwC, Deloitte, KPMG. And to me, that's amazing because, and don't get me wrong, there's also a lot that have come from SaaS sales, but particularly for me, for my team, I haven't come from the industry. So I have hired quite a few people from Deloitte recently, and I've spoken with some people with PwC, KPMG. And they're probably the candidates that are most interesting to me because I can teach them sales. Sales is easy for me. It's easy for me to coach. It's easy for me to teach. I think it's easy for the right person to learn. And so when I meet these candidates and I see that they've been in the GRC world, some of them for 6, 7, even 8 years, they've been consulting on compliance, or they've been working with frameworks like NIST, ISO, things that I don't have a ton of experience in, but they know them inside out. And I meet them and they have a certain energy and they have a, presence and great communication skills. I can easily teach them how to then sell that product. They can already talk about the product. I just give them a few extra little things here and there to go from talking about it to selling it. That's a pretty easy switch. So that's a big way at Auditboard that we absolutely extend the talent pool. We're not just looking for sales professionals. And, the same even at my last job at Meltwater, I was there for a decade and we really didn't look for people with sales experience at all. It was completely based on the person. And if they were coachable, because again, a lot of our hires were straight out of school. So of course they're not going to have experience. They've been in school. What do you want? And then maybe they are out of school and they've been out of school 2 or 3 years and they've been doing something completely different. Like a lot of the hires, some great hires I've hired, and this is obviously, local to Washington, DC, but think about the market you're in. In Washington, DC, a lot of the best hires I got were people that were interning for, politicians on the Hill, right? They were working in politics. They realized there was no money to be made unless you make it really big, or also a lot of them are working like 22-hour days. In sales, good news, guys, you're never going to work that much. People think sales is like 22-hour days. It's not. Software sales is pretty much 9 to 6, and then you do an hour here and there. But yeah, so we stole a lot of political interns, people from that world who had amazing communication skills. Obviously, they were in politics, and then we could easily teach them sales. And I think just think about that for whatever market you're in. I mean, now it's a remote world, right? So we hire across US and Canada. You can have your pick. You can have your cream of the crop. So if you have a technical product, look at who's already working in that industry. Who can you take from there that can actually sell it? Probably a lot of them. They might not even know it. Some of the people I speak with are like, oh, I never thought about doing sales. Some of them bring up some of the original objections that I mentioned from way back. There's this old stigma of sales. I do think it's changing a lot. I think a lot of people have heard, oh, hold on, I can make a lot of money in sales. So that's been nice. I feel like that's kind of been a change I've just noticed in the industry, in the world in the last couple of years. But there's still like a nervousness. So that's again where I usually try to speak and tell them like, listen, 12 years ago, if someone asked me to be on a podcast and speak about myself or speak about recruitment or anything like that, like that would be my worst nightmare. I'm not an extrovert. I'm very an introverted person. I'm not, was never good at public speaking, but this is something that you can learn and you can do it. And so, yeah, I think you can really broaden your talent pool, especially if you focus on who's already in your industry, who are, experts in the product you're selling. You're going to have an even more amazing hire if you can find those people.
Yeah, it's great advice, especially those that are kind of looking at it where it's a sales role. They need to be a salesperson, and it's like, well, no, think deeper. Like think kind of what is the easier thing to teach? Is it easier to teach the industry knowledge or the sales aspect? And like you kind of are exploring both options. So when you have different types of candidates in front of you, I would imagine your messaging or your pitch is going to be different depending on who you're talking to. So how does the message change depending on the audience or the type of candidate? And why is it important to change the message?
Yeah, I think it's really important to change the message. And I feel like I might have touched on this earlier, but for me, it's one of the number one things is understanding that what's important for you might not be important for someone else. And again, going back to the fact that recruiting or interviewing is a sales, I don't want to say pitch because I don't want people to feel like they're pitched, but it's definitely sales, right? You can interview all the best candidates in the world, but that's a complete waste of your time if none of them take the job. And even if people are, there's a lot of layoffs recently, right? And so I think sometimes people might think, oh, they're desperate for a job. I'm just going to interview them and give it to. Nobody's desperate for a job anymore. There's plenty of, especially in sales, there is many, many companies hiring. And if you don't come across with the goods, as in what they're interested in, they're not going to take the job. Or if they do take the job, even worse, they'll take it as a backup. And then 3 months in, they'll get their number one choice job or the other job they actually wanted. And they'll think, oh, this was just my backup, and then you'll lose them. So I think absolutely you have to change your pitch. For example, if I'm talking to industry professionals that maybe haven't been in sales, first thing is you even have to change your language. They don't know what quotas really mean, or, commissions and things like that. A lot of that stuff is new. So I steer away from that. A big question I ask them is, where do you want to be 3 years from now? Not where do you want to be working in 2 months? Because, that's kind of arbitrary. It's really about, and this is something I learned from one of my former bosses. She would always say to me, think about your career in 3 to 5 year steps. Don't make any career decisions based on what you want to be doing tomorrow. Make your career decision based on where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now. 10 years, some people say 10 years, but that's too far out, especially for, people in their 20s, 30s. 10 years feels like a long time. But 3 years, that doesn't feel so long. And I know myself, in 3 years, I want to be in a VP or a CRO role, and I want to have, I want to have made a lot more money and be on track, hopefully, to have seen another rocket ship IPO or get bought or whatever the case may be. That's really my goal. I love being part of, a startup and seeing it through. And I'm hoping in 3 years I can be, a key leader like I was at Meltwater in Auditboard's development. So you see how, I know what I want 3 years from now. I try to find out, what does the candidate want 3 years from now? And then once they tell me, usually I can apply that to what we can offer at Auditboard. Because whether they're actually coming from SaaS sales or industry or straight from school, typically what people want 3 years from now is some form of success. And if you're working for a good company, like I usually am, and I am a very passionate leader, I will help you be successful. I truly will. And that's something that I can say on an interview and say it with my whole heart and mean it. And I think, again, that's why asking that question, where do they want to be 3 years from now? It's usually either financially motivated, success in leadership, you just, having a job that they love and they feel like they've mastered it or are close to mastery or have moved up in some way. And I think most companies, if you look at your company, you can offer that, right? You can offer good money. You can offer leadership opportunities. You can offer career development. So figure out what is important to that person and then tell them how you're going to help them get there. That's always been the biggest thing for me. And then just remember who you're talking to too. And then if I'm talking to salespeople, I can be a lot more direct about territories, quotas. Here's what you're going to make. For example, at Auditboard, there's huge opportunity right now. I tell them, I'm this is I literally tell the salespeople on my team, you're really lucky. Right now, this isn't a typical sales job. They've got BDRs, they've got leads coming from everywhere. They've got large territories. And I don't know if they realize that it's not like that at other sales companies. So again, it's really important to tell them it isn't, because some of them haven't worked in sales before. And the ones that have worked in sales before, they get it. They're like, oh, this is really cool. And so I make sure in the interview, they know that this is a really awesome opportunity. If they get offered it, they know the opportunity, they're going to want to take it. Versus maybe a larger company, right? I always say this, everyone can go work at Oracle or Slack or one of these big companies. But if you want to make a name for yourself and you want to make a lot of money, you got to look for unique opportunities.
Now, and that brings up a good point, because, it's a challenge now to offer that when there's been so many of these companies that have sold that, and then, they had to lay people off. So there's a large number of people that sign up for that vision, and then it doesn't come to fruition. So there may be a little bit of a lack of trust in that. I don't want to say that dream, or that pitch, but that angle. So as you're talking to individuals that may be, having this bad experience, are you adjusting the message to people that have just fallen victim to some of the layoffs?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'm doing is relating to them, because I really do. I think about it myself, and I'm like, what if I had chosen the wrong company 6 months ago? I could have been laid off. And I tell them this. I tell them I've got 3 children. I have a mortgage. I was very picky with who I was going to choose. And I had a long list of things that I was looking for in a company, and I had to check them off before I would choose a company. So first thing I'll do is relate that sucks that you got laid off. But I'll tell them why I don't think that will happen at Auditboard. I also tell them nobody knows the future. I'm never going to make promises, but I tell them that it was a concern I had leaving Meltwater. I was there for 12 years. I was super comfortable. I did not get laid off. I could have stayed there for a lot longer. And I knew that, of course there's a recession coming, and I'm sorry, I'm going to change out my.
You're on mute. There we go.
Yeah. I knew it was important to choose the right company. And some of the things I talk through is my list. Okay. So the first thing I look at is the product. Do they have a product that's relevant right now? Is it going to be around in 3 years? Right. Is what industry are they selling to and what industry are they in? Right. You don't have to be a genius to know that there's certain industries that are going to be affected more. There's the nice to have products and the need to have products. For me, compliance is only getting more and more important in the world, right? No matter what happens, no matter what companies go under, if your business is not compliant with certain laws and certain, things you have to be compliant with, regulations, frameworks, then you're going to get shut down. Forget about recessions. You're going to get shut down, or you're going to have a massive breach, and then you won't be able to, then you'll go bankrupt anyway. There was just so many indicators for me that product was the right space. The next thing you have to look at is the leadership. I come from a company where leadership did change quite a bit at the beginning. It was a startup. One thing I loved about Meltwater is I learned so much from being part of a company from the day one to the IPO. I got to see it all the way through, and I wanted to see it again, but I wanted to see it with a leadership team who were different to who I worked with before. I didn't want to go and work with some of the same people, although that would be amazing and, love them to death. But I wanted to do it with a completely different group of people. And what I did look at is who in the leadership team at Auditboard, where were they coming from? Do they have experience? And it really settled me to know that they had done this before. So most of the leadership at Auditboard, like the CRO, the CEO, they've taken other companies to IPO. At Meltwater, a lot of us were doing it for the first time. And again, amazing experience because we got to figure it out together and we learned so much. But this time I was like, if I'm going to do it again, I want to see kind of how the pros do it, right? Kind of how these people do it that have done it before. And then I asked a lot of questions. I think that's so important. And this is what I tell candidates when I'm trying to relate to them. I'm like, I get it. I'd be nervous too. Make sure you ask me a lot of questions. Make sure you ask all the other companies a lot of questions, because I'll give you all the answers. I asked about churn rates. I asked, average deal size, people on quota, the different things. The more you can find out. And the big things that stood out to me again was the company's cash flow positive. It's run by auditors. Auditors are very, and I'm learning this more and more since I actually got the job. They're very data focused. They make decisions cautiously. So, there's a lot of sales companies out there with sales leaders in charge that are amazing and passionate and inspiring, but, they make decisions very quickly, like hiring 100 people and firing 100 people. Auditors, this space, things move a little slower. And it's one thing I've had to learn is I need to be more patient in just my day-to-day. But again, it gives me a lot of, reassurance that I'm in the right place, that I'm not going to be laid off, or I'm not going to have to lay off my team, because that would suck just as much, honestly, as I think nearly being laid off. I've had to do layoffs before, and it's not fun. So I always tell them I don't have any magic bullet to tell them. I can't give them a promise in writing that things will go perfectly here. But I tell them that everything that I looked at and what my grid looked like and why Auditboard checked the boxes. And I say, look, if you look at this, I thought it was worth the risk. I've got 3 kids. I'm not, when I took the job at Meltwater, I was single, no kids. I could take more risk. I wasn't willing to take a risk this time, but I really wanted that startup environment. I wanted the high growth, which is often related to high risk, right? But I wanted to find something in the middle. And I think that's what I found with Auditboard. It's high growth. It is a startup, but it has a really strong foundation. And I think that, if you've been laid off and you're looking for a position, it doesn't matter whether it's Auditboard or somewhere else, you can find it again. And the other thing too is not only to ask enough questions, but a piece of advice I give to a lot of people who have been laid off, whether I end up hiring them or not, is don't bring the energy with you. I think there's nothing worse than being on an interview with someone that has been laid off and they just have that energy of they're still maybe a little angry about it, or even worse, actually, here's what I've seen a lot is they're down about it. And I get it. And that sucks. But I'm not going to hire someone that's down on themselves. I want to help them. I want to be their best friend, but I need someone who's going to come in and be confident and show Auditboard, show the platform, sell it to everyone, massive territories, massive money to be made. I need someone who believes in themselves, even when, the chips are down. Because I think that's an important part of life, but also in sales, right? You have to be able to take the hits with the good times. Sales is going to go up and down and up and down. And so if you've been laid off, and maybe you've been laid off twice or 3 times, it really sucks, but don't let it get to you. This is part of your life. You're going to get to that next step. You're going to get to the next place that was probably meant to be in the first place. So I think that's just a piece of advice I try to say is, believe in yourself. If you got laid off, it's nothing to do with you. Everyone, like lots of people are getting laid off. But if you bring it to the interview, you're going to find it much harder to get a job, because that's kind of a big no-no for me when I'm hiring people.
Awesome. Thanks for the advice. And I think that's great for people that are either victims and looking for jobs of their next job after a layoff, or people that are interviewing those that are coming from those situations. So I know we've taken your time. To wrap things up, I just want to know, like, what excites you about the future of Auditboard, and where can we find you?
Okay. Yeah. What excites me about the future of Auditboard? I think a lot of things. Like I said, so a lot of the things that I wanted to check off when I was interviewing there have come true. I actually tell this, it's kind of a joke. I say on interviews, I'm like, I didn't really believe them when they told me as an interview, they said, we have a 98% renewal rate. And I was like, that genuinely, I was like, man, nobody in software has a 98% renewal rate. So one of the first things I did when I got here is I was like investigated, and I started speaking to people in customer success. It's true. They're not actually just exaggerating. So I think what excites me is that customers love the product. They are renewing. And to me, that's amazing, because we're still early days here. The product isn't finished. We're adding new things. We just added a new feature this month. Actually, it's going to go fully live next month, which is this feature that is called vendor management. And I don't want to say everyone, but like 50% of the demos I've been on since I got here, they're asking if we do that. And we're adding that. And so I think what I'm the most excited about is that the product's already doing really well. I think usually when you work at a startup, it takes a while for the product to catch up, and you have to be really good at sales. But I just think the sky's the limit, right? If you have a product this early on that's working, you have a sales team that's hitting their quotas, you have an amazing marketing team. They run events and conferences, and I've never seen numbers like this attend conferences and events. So I feel like a lot of the pieces of the puzzle are there to make this, like you said yourself earlier on, I feel like it's very like cheesy or whatever, but like the next rocket ship. I've been at Meltwater. I've seen what it takes to get a company to IPO. It's so exciting. You learn so much. And I feel like a lot of the great things that I saw Meltwater do, they're doing here, and they're doing them maybe even quicker and earlier on. And that's what's most exciting to me is like, where's Auditboard going to be in 2, 3, 4 years? I don't fully know, but I think it's going to be in a great spot, and I want to make sure that I'm there, kind of on the ground level. I guess I want to be part of it. I was so proud of what we did at Meltwater, and I want to do it again.
Awesome.
And then, where can you find me?
Great. Yeah, where can we find you?
I guess in Dublin in my mom's kitchen right now, but you can find me on LinkedIn. So Aisling Blundell. It's weird spelling, but yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to speak, share tips and tricks. Recruitment is something that, and I think interviewing it too, it's something you learn from every interview almost, or, like you learn little different ways of asking things and ways of seeing things. So always love to converse more, and happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Aisling, thank you so much for joining us this week from your mom's kitchen in Ireland. I know I got a lot of value out of the conversation, and I'm going to be going back and taking a lot of notes, because I was trying to do my host duties and not be a researcher during. But thank you so much for sharing your insights. I'm excited to follow along with Auditboard's growth and rocket ship journey, as I'm sure everybody else is. And for those that were watching, thank you for attending, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.